Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome to the latest Survive pre-alpha video. For those of you who don't know, Survive is a zombie survival game that's set in a procedural open world. So if you didn't know that, I should also tell you that you can play this pre-alpha build right now and get access to all future builds of the game by pre-ordering at subsurfacegames.com/survive. So this is a culmination of everything I've been working on over the last year. The world, city, road, and house generation are all finally in the game and fully playable. This update was all about building the foundation of the world generation pipeline. I'll go into more detail on that in the next video, but right now I'm going to talk about the final output of that pipeline and other improvements to the engine and game. As you can see, the game has changed dramatically since pre-alpha 4. We can now walk around basic neighborhoods in large cities and explore every house. In Survive, you can go inside literally every single building you see, and that freedom is one of the core pillars of the game. So if we go into one of these houses, you can see that we have working doors, interior trimming, and a new transparent rendering system for the windows. Giving the windows correct lighting or even just believable lighting was a pain with the engine's deferred renderer, but I think it ended up looking pretty good. Every building in the game, like the rest of the world, is completely procedurally generated, meaning that every single house and building has a 100% unique layout. This way you won't have to search the same boring buildings over and over again as you move throughout the world. With this update, we also have a basic interaction system so we can open the doors. This system will be used for the looting I'm currently working on, which will be in the next update. I should also mention that the door opening still needs some work. In the future there will be a more natural system where the doors smoothly animate open like in most games, and then they will only be able to open in one direction like in real life. You probably noticed that the house layouts are not exactly realistic yet. Some rooms are way too big, some are too small, there's not enough open room connections, and support for two-story houses needs to be added. The reason for all this is that my focus for this entire update was getting the generation pipeline foundations in. What that means is I wanted to get the data flowing smoothly from continent generation to city generation, to interstate generation, to city road generation, to city block generation, to building placement, to building generation, and then finally to the in-game streaming and real-time mesh creation. Because my focus was on this pipeline, I only wanted to create very basic, passable core generation algorithms as placeholders that can easily be improved. So the house layouts are simplistic, the city road layouts are not quite right, and maybe the mountains generated from the plate tectonic simulation are off a little bit, but that's okay for now. Now that the pipeline is flowing, I can very quickly iterate on these generation algorithms, constantly making the world more realistic and lush. After this large core update, you can expect more frequent releases with improvements to the generation algorithms and new features like loot, inventory, hunger, and thirst, which will all be in the next update. No more year-long or even month-long updates. There are many issues with pre-alpha 5, but one thing I'm particularly sad didn't make it into this build was the road intersections. I actually made a nice road intersection system earlier in the update, but improvements to the generation broke them. So you can see right now roads just overlap. This is a screenshot of the intersection system while it was still working, so you can see what you can expect in the future for intersections. It's pretty damn hard to dynamically handle intersections at non-90 degree angles, but I think the realism and fluidity it brings to the world is really important. This will probably not be in the next update because my new focus is on getting the basic gameplay in with loot and survival mechanics, but no, it's near the top of my list of things to do. So before I go into the generation stages, I'm going to go over some of the major features I implemented with this update. The first and most important thing I did was implement a brand new terrain and world shift system. In pre-alpha 4, the terrain system was generated by creating large chunks around the player, and each chunk had its own set of textures. This is okay if you want short view distances and don't care about losing terrain detail close to the player. This new system now gives each individual terrain patch its own set of resident textures. This means that you can increase the view distance as much as you want while keeping the terrain detail close to the player, where it's important. This new system also uses some newer OpenGL extensions to make streaming much more efficient, and cause almost no noticeable performance hitches. The old system in pre-alpha 4 had some serious issues with this. While all of those detail and performance improvements are nice, the real benefit of this new terrain system comes with the improved world shifting system. So because our world is just absolutely massive, when you start to get tens of thousands of meters away from the origin of the world, you start running into all sorts of terrible rendering glitches because of floating point precision issues. There are ways to mitigate this in the way you do your math, but the only real solution is to constantly move the entire world so the player is back at the origin. You can see my original solution to this in pre-alpha 4, or the pre-alpha 3 video. Whenever we moved to another terrain chunk, the world would shift so the new terrain chunk is now the center of the world. That worked okay, but it meant that the shift distance was tied to the world chunk size, which needs to be optimized for performance. and it was also possible to outrun the shift if you were moving fast enough. While just playing the game normally, it's generally not an issue walking around, but when you have cars, boats, and planes, you could very easily outrun the old world shift system. This new system is much more robust, and I'm really happy with it. It's actually quite simple. If you are further than X meters away from the world of origin, we trigger a shift to get you back. So if you are 100,000 meters or 200 meters away, you will always get the correct shift. Once the shift is triggered, we start generating a new terrain in the background for your new position so that the terrain is perfectly centered. Once it's done, we make that the new visible terrain and shift everything. Now we're back at the center of the world and the player notices nothing. I like to think of this as the terrain back buffer, which would only be possible with a new terrain system. I'm sure there's a more efficient way to handle the terrain shift, but this works for now. So with all these houses and roads, performance starts to become an issue. To help me track down performance problems, I implemented a fancy new hierarchical zone profiler. It saves the performance of the last 200 frames so I can very easily see the fluctuation over time and identify performance spikes. So if I pause the profiler, I can step back a few frames and see what caused that spike in the performance graph. In this case, I already knew it was the cube map generation, but if I see a random spike, I can now pause and investigate. This really helped improve the background world streaming performance hitches, but they are still an issue that needs more work. This tool is also really great for just generally seeing what's taking up performance visually, and being able to drill down to what exactly is taking milliseconds. With this new tool, I improved the frame rate on my computer from 45 FPS in pre-alpha 5 to about 115 FPS in 5.1. Performance is still pretty bad, so the view distance on houses has been drastically reduced temporarily, and there's still a ton of optimizations that need to be done. Unfortunately, as development continues, there will be periods after new features are added, but the performance is not that great, like right now for instance. That's just a fact of development, and I will do my best to minimize these times. But I think it's more important to release a feature that may not have the best performance yet, than hide it away until it's perfect. I really care about performance, and will not rest until everyone down to the min spec is running at least 60 frames per second. So that's all for this part. Thanks for watching, and be sure to let me know if you have any issues with Pre-Alpha 5, or just want to talk about the game. You could send me an email, but I'd much rather talk to you guys on Skype, Steam, or Twitter. Usually if you message me on Steam or something, I can push a patch to fix your issue in about an hour or so, depending on the bug, which is way better for everybody. I always want to know what you guys think, and I like talking about the game, so please don't hesitate to shoot me a message or leave a comment. Also, like I said before, if you pre-order, you can play this build of the game right now and get a Steam key that will give you access to every future build of the game. The gameplay is still basic as you can see, but in a week or so the game will have loot and survival, with large content updates rolling out frequently. It's only $20, so if you want to come along for the ride and support development, you can get it at subsurfacegames.com/survive. So one more thing, I should quickly mention that development's not being tracked with Trello. If you want to see in 100% real time exactly what's being worked on in the game, you should really check it out. I absolutely love the Trello board and how it really opens up the development to you guys. You can also go and vote on issues you want to see in the game first. That way I can prioritize what should be worked on next. I really care about you guys, and this is a great way for me to keep you updated and work on what you all want the most. So head over there and let me know what that is. And thanks again for watching.